The other day I ran into a painter I haven't seen in about 5 years, and he launched into a series of questions to try to find out how well I'm doing in my career. The exact questions he asks me every single time he sees me. Painters are creepy people, which is why I don't like them very much. And they have a tacit language with each other to try to glean information on how well the competition is doing. And I've assembled some of those questions and I'll translate them into what they actually mean. How did you get into that gallery? Really says it couldn't be the quality of the work. And my response is exactly what they want to hear, that I put on knee pads and blew the owners. Do you have storage space in your studio? Really says, are you selling work? Do you build your own stretchers? Really means, can you afford to have someone do that? How do you ship your paintings to your shows? As a way of asking, do you have a dealer? I didn't realize that painting like this was possible. Really means, God, get me out of here. Do you have any drawings? Is another way of saying, I didn't realize that painting like this was possible. I went to your opening last night. Great shirt. Really says, horrific show. And then my favorite, let's have lunch sometime, which is a painter's way of saying, F you in the neck. The other night I was speaking to some younger painters at an art college, and the question of style came up. How does one create a style as a painter? My answer is always the same. You don't. There is no such thing as a style. If you're thinking about style, then you're thinking about style and you're not painting. Painting is a verb. You can't manufacture a vision. All you can do is work diligently, obsessively, and consistently as long as and as much as you possibly can until you simply give up. And then what's left over is what you exaggerate and intensify, and that becomes your spark. I'm a big believer in that a painter is born the day that they give up. Get all of the Joan Mitchells and the Morandis and the Gustons out of your system now, and then what's left over, that handful of lonely, weird stuff, then you're onto something. Style comes when you get out of your own way. Painting is also destructive in that the painter tries to mangle and detonate visual perception for a few seconds and then bring it back together in some new way. Painting is also destructive in that you put things down and then destroy them. A big proportion of my day is spent applying things and then removing it with t-shirts and with knives and scraping. I spend a lot of money on paint and a lot of it ends up on the floor. But taking something out of a painting implies that it was once there. So even though it doesn't end up in the final painting, there's still a murmur or an echo of it in the collective history of that painting. There's that John Berger quote in his book Ways of Seeing, and I'm paraphrasing. Visual imagery, as long as it's not being used as a mask or a disguise, is always a comment on absence. That visual images always speak of disappearance. And I'm obsessed with that notion of vanishing, of disappearance. Painting is not just about what we apply, what we put in, but it's also about what's not there, what's taken away. It's about vanishing. That as soon as you put a form down on a canvas with paint, it doesn't belong to the world anymore. It's gone forever. Is there an infinite inventory of forms out there, and as soon as we use one of them up, it's extinguished? That the very act of us seeing it deletes it from existence. There are these little aquatic flies called mayflies, and they have a lifespan of 30 minutes. And I sometimes think of those when I'm looking at a painter like Albert York, for instance. That his images, his forms have such a brief lifespan that they seem to vanish as I'm looking at them. So that the idea that they were there and then they seem to disappear completes their lifespan as I'm looking at them in my mind's eye. so that the next time I look at an Albert York painting, it's just simply a comparison to that previous time. And essentially, the experience of living with painting and looking at painting is just the gradual construction of a temple of comparisons. That's all we're doing, is creating an architecture of comparisons over a broad arc of time. That to me is the richness and the breadth of living with painting, is constructing that temple. That when you look at something, it's as much about what you're not putting in and not seeing as it is about what you're seeing. It's got to be about the other half. Painting is not just adding, adding, adding all the time. It's got to squeeze out other things as soon as you put new things in. So it's as much about what's there as about what's not there. So a question you might ask yourself when you're looking at your painting or developing your painting is not what's there, or is it truthful, or is it realistic, but does it continue? And I think the only way it can continue is to be aware of what's not there as much as you are about what is there. Rejection is part of our lives as artists. It's in our job description. Rejection is just as an important a component in our tackle box as learning how to draw the nude figure or mix purple and yellow to make brown. It is part of what constitutes us as artists. I have a pillowcase in my studio which is full of rejection letters from galleries from the late 80s, which I keep around as a reminder of how important that process was in my development as a painter, in galvanizing me, in allowing me to become my own best friend. Over the years, I've had hundreds of reviews of my exhibitions, many of them really good and some of them terrible. There was one in the mid-90s in the Philadelphia Inquirer, which was apparently so lousy the dealer wouldn't even let me read it. I think he went out and bought all the papers around the gallery. And so I don't read my reviews at all. And I haven't for 20 years. Not because I don't care, I do care, but because I feel like I have enough doubt and uncertainty in myself that I don't need it articulated by a writer. A critic has a job to do, and I have a job to do. My job is to show up every day in my studio and make my paintings. I read art criticism, I just don't read my reviews. It's important for me to have a cable that runs directly from the deepest point inside of me into my work. And that cable has taken a long time to develop. It is resolute and taut, and it's unwavering regardless of what people think, good or bad. That's what's important, is to develop that tether right into your work. There are many things to fear in this world, but fear of failure and fear of rejection is not one of them. There is no upside to that. Embrace rejection. It's part of what makes us as artists. We put ourselves out there, and everybody ain't gonna like it. That's part of what we do. Gather it up, put it in your tackle box, and we take it with us. I just read the Steve Martin autobiography, Born Standing Up, and there's a line in there that says, it's easy to be great, it's hard to be good. It's hard to be consistent, show after show after show. I remember starting out, I could draw well as a child, as a young child. I never took lessons, I never took color theory, but when I started painting and started doing, getting into exhibitions when I was about 17, they were awful. And over the years, I don't think I got better, I just think I made awful go up a couple of levels. And sometimes that's the most interesting work. When awful is brought up, stunningly awful is sometimes has the most vitality and the most nerve. And I feel like after 38 years of painting, I'm to the point where I can get a painting to look really good on the first day, and then it just nosedives after that. And it takes several months to get it back up to the level where it hums again. And I don't work on one painting, I work on about 10 to 12 paintings at once, always for a specific show, which is scheduled about 2 years out. So the work I'm doing now is for a show in New York next fall, and then San Francisco and Atlanta after that. So I've always started with the premise that no one cares about my work, no one cares about what I have to say, and that's very freeing. I feel like I become bulletproof, I trust myself, and I can move forward with that cable directly into my work, regardless of what is said, good or bad. Sometimes good reviews are the worst, because then one is tempted to just repeat good behavior. I want to bring awful up to a level where it really, really sings, and it takes a long time. So I read art criticism, I just don't read mine. What I love about these videos is that they are in real time. A lot of the things I talk about here are things that I'm working on in my studio right now. And I'm thinking a lot about representation. What am I trying to represent in my work? I am a landscape painter who arrives at my images through the process of abstraction. But I no longer believe that a painting can be about paint. I believe that I am representing something. I don't know if I can answer that. It's taken me 30 plus years to learn to stop thinking when I'm painting. Painting is not about logic and analysis. Painting is about doing. You can't think a painting. Certainly cognition comes in before and after, but not during the act of putting paint on a canvas. Sometimes I believe that what makes a painter is just simply their willingness to do things that other people wouldn't care about or wouldn't do. I'll spend days trying to orient the forms just right on a canvas. I'll spend hours trying to mix just the right timbre of pink. And I think through consistent work and repetition arises a deep and rich beauty. As if I'm trying to find a way to fit into the world by making a third thing, by creating something outside of myself. I've done many, many drawings of myself standing naked in front of a mirror, and there comes a point where if you stare at something familiar so long, it suddenly becomes foreign, as if that's the first step in representing something that goes beyond the visible world, trying to figure out what I am by first discovering what I am not. And I believe that the world is too terrifying and beautiful to just push paint around a canvas all day. I believe that I am representing something. I don't know if I can articulate that or even talk about it, and maybe that's the point, I don't have to, but I can tell it's something I will revisit in some of these videos.